Welcome, everyone, to our exclusive speakers series as part of the Milken Motsepe Prize in Agritech. We are so excited to be joined today by Kamran Elahian with his talk, Hacking Innovation, the Story of a Serial Entrepreneur. Before we get started, just a few thank yous. As always, we want to thank our sponsors and partners at the Motsepe Foundation. We also want to thank our programming partners at GIC, and of course, to all of you who are part of the Milken Motsepe Prize. My name is Emily Musel-Church, and I'm Senior Director at the Center for Strategic Philanthropy at the Milken Institute. I lead the management of the Milken Motsepe Prize, and we are so excited to support and promote entrepreneurs from the continent and across the globe. Today, for our last speaker series in 2021, we're so excited to be joined by Kamran Elahian, who is founder and chairman of the Global Innovation Catalyst, GIC. GIC is Kamran is a global tech entrepreneur who has 3 unicorn IPOs. Kamran is here today to share his entrepreneurial journey, his success, his failures, and the lessons he's learned to hack innovation. Kamran is founder and chairman not only of Global Innovation Catalyst, but he also advises various governments on the needed transition from fossil-based economies to sustainable innovation economies. In the past, as a global high-tech entrepreneur, he co-founded 10 companies, had 6 exits, and again, these 3 unicorn IPOs that we're going to be hearing about today, he has a total market cap of over $8 billion. We will begin Kamran's story, but we'll also have time to get your questions. So please, as you're listening to Kamran and his entrepreneurial journey, please put your questions in the Q&A section that you'll see on your screen below. Don't worry if these questions disappear, they're being curated. And at the end of Kamran's remarks, we will do our best to get all your questions answered. So please feel free to put your questions in throughout. Without further ado, Kamran, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. It's my honor and pleasure to be discussing some of hopefully good ideas and some crazy ideas with you. Innovation is a little bit crazy, and entrepreneurship definitely is out of the box thinking and has a lot of crazy angles to it. Thank you, Emily, with introducing me. Let me give you a little bit of background about the 4 different phases of my life and how I ended up to be where I am right now. I was born in Iran, and when I was 8 or 9 years old, I told my parents that I want to go and change the world. And they were really surprised. They said, "What's going on?" We had a family gathering and everybody was talking. And I was just surprised that nobody wanted to go and do something global. And I asked them, "Why don't you want to go and change the world?" And my mom said, "Come on, just go and have your dinner. Why are you disrupting our nice family conversation?" But this was stuck in my mind. And when I was 18 years old, I came to America. I got a few degrees in math, computer science, computer graphics at a very early age. And in my days, if you wanted to go and do something innovative, you had to go to Silicon Valley. So in 1978, when I was 24 years old, I came to Silicon Valley and I started to work at HP, Hewlett Packard. And I was working at corporate engineering labs, and I had an idea and that I should learn about chip design. And HP paid my way to go to Stanford. As you know, Stanford is very expensive and very exclusive. So I couldn't afford it with my income at that time. And I went and I designed a chip. It took about a year. I learned chip design. And when I came back to look at the results within a year when the chip was fabricated, I found out the chip is not working. So that was the first big failure of my life. And I went to my boss and I informed him that I have some good news and some bad news. The good news, he said, no, 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 tell me about the bad news. I said, the bad news is that the chip is not working. He said, okay, this is really bad because we spent so much time and energy trying to get you to become a chip designer. And at that time, there were less than 1,000 chip designers in the world. I mentioned to him that, but you know why the chip was not working? Because we didn't have any tools to do simulation, to do analysis. Based on some formulas, we went and created a design and sent it for fabrication. We are HP. The good news is if you give me promotion and about 4 or 5 engineers, I can go and develop a new engineering workstation that would help engineers design chips that would work. And at that time, HP had less than 50 chip designers. I said, imagine if we could make this thing happen and HP could have over 1,000 chip designers. So unfortunately, I failed to convince him and I had to take my engineers with me and we went and started my first company. I was 26 years old and it was called CAE Systems, Computer Aided Engineering. 3 years later, HP wanted to buy it for about 50 million, but we got much better offer from HP's competitor, Tektronix. And I wasn't even 30 years old when Tektronix acquired the company for $75 million. And that was an unbelievable deal because it made front page of Wall Street Journal, and particularly important because it was right at the time of after Iranian revolution, after hostage crisis, days of a very turbulent relationship between the United States and Iran. And here was an immigrant kid who had come, and most of my family had become refugees after revolution. And here, coming to Silicon Valley, learning about innovation methods and entrepreneurship, I was able to take care of all the financial needs of my family. After that, I started 9 more companies, and Emily was very kind to talk about the big successes and the 6 that succeeded and 3 of them that became a multi-billion-dollar unicorns. But reality is that also 3 of them failed. And I actually was fired twice. And for any of you who haven't been fired in your life yet, I would say that try it. I mean, try to be innovative, do something different, and be prepared. You might fail. And I learned so much more from my failures than from my successes that pushed me to actually define success as management of failures. And while it felt really bad when I was failing and seeing that my own company, my baby, was failing and I was getting fired, a few months later, a year later, I would say, what did I do wrong? And I learned from it. And then the next company would be much bigger success. So failure is okay as long as you look at it as a stepstone towards success. Now, that was the first phase of my life. And through the Q&A, I'm happy to discuss each one of those companies with you. But the next phase of my life was to be a global venture capital investor. We had a $350 million fund, and we invested in high-tech companies in the United States, Japan, China, India, Israel, and Singapore. Through this process, I learned a lot about the innovation ecosystems within each country and how many obstacles were in front of the entrepreneurs in order to try to create successful companies within their own ecosystem. Some of the governments started to ask me to help them with their programs. The most notable one was Singapore. For 5 years, between 1997 and 2002, I was an advisor to Deputy Prime Minister of Singapore, Dr. Tony Tan. And as you look at it, with the little help that I did, and with all the amazing energy and efforts that Singapore government put to create an amazing future for them, today Singapore is a platform for whole Asia for innovation in information technology and a center of excellence for genetic engineering and biotech. Within my years as a VC, I also was very lucky to find some very unusual companies. A company like BSIM that invented 4G technology, first WiMAX and LTE, was a leading company. And we had filed to go for IPO, as it would have been my fourth unicorn, this time as a VC. But 2009 financial crisis happened, and we sold the company for $330 million to Broadcom. However, I also have been the founding board member of an amazing company called SoundHound. About 15 years ago, I met these two PhD students and a master's student at Stanford University who had a crazy idea. They wanted to develop the most advanced voice recognition and natural language processing company called SoundHound. And I'm so happy to say that after 15 years of supporting the company, working with them, and our fund putting about $14 million during these 15 years into the company and convincing other investors to invest another $250 million. This company announced SPAC that is going public at a valuation of $2.1 billion. So I'm so glad that the efforts of the CEO and the management and the founding team was paid off finally after so many years. The third chapter of my life was global philanthropy. About 25 years ago, my wife and I decided that we should take majority of our money and create a foundation. Our first big project, global project, was called Schools Online. Between 1996 and 2003, we worked in 6,400 schools in 36 countries. We would donate computers to all these schools. We would pay for the cost of internet. And in some of them, we created computer labs. In those cases, we were giving them 10 to 20 computers. And we helped train over 10,000 teachers globally in these 36 countries how to incorporate the power of internet within their curriculum. In 2003, we merged Schools Online with a relief agency called Relief International, which my wife was on the board of, and we started to work in refugee camps, not only helping refugees with medical supplies and necessary clothing and blankets and those things that every relief agency does. But as we got to understand the situation, we would set up computer labs and internet learning centers and help create jobs and livelihood for the refugees. By 2009, the combined organization of Relief International Schools Online had over 2,000 employees in 25 countries, and our annual budget was over $45 million. That was the year that United Nations asked me to become co-chair of UN GATE, United Nations Global Alliance for Use of ICT in Development. Obviously, I'm not 100 years old, so in some of these things, I did it in parallel. Our global philanthropy and venture capital coincided. However, about 6 years ago, I thought that we needed to create a new company in a very modern method to go and help create 10 million jobs of future, innovation jobs across the world. To give you a little bit better understanding of what happened and why is it that I stopped my entrepreneurial activities, my venture capital activities, and zeroed in, focused all of our work of philanthropy in a new model to create Global Innovation Catalyst as a very innovative but unusual global company. I think we should talk more about what we see for the future of the world. If we look at it, in evolution of our species, the first economy that we had started about 12,000 years ago was agricultural economy, followed by industrial economy, then knowledge economy. What was important about knowledge economy was for the first time, all you had to have was good brains, and you would be able to participate in creation of wealth for your family, for your country, for your nation. And this was the first time that women had a chance to become leaders. Around 20 years ago was the beginning of innovation economy. Now, it's a probably unfamiliar term for you. The reason we call it innovation economy is because it is changing everything that we do. Why don't I call it fourth industrial revolution? It's because innovation economy is not just affecting industry. It is also affecting governments. It's affecting academia. Every aspect of our lives is being disrupted. So let's talk about it a bit more. What is the difference between innovation economy and knowledge economy? In knowledge economy, knowledge was very important. Ideas were very important, and you had to protect them with patents, with trade secrets. IP was very, very important. In innovation economy, it's all about implementation and execution. Remember, I mentioned 3 of my companies failed. Not because the idea was bad. It was because I failed in implementation and execution. We all love to use the resources of Google. It put all the knowledge of the world available to us in every language for free. How could we not like that? However, was Google the first company that came up with the idea of a search engine? No. There were companies like Infosec, Excite, Alta Vista, Yahoo, asked you many companies before Google. What Google did was it did its implementation and execution much better than anyone else. Idea was the same. Let's look at what it means to be a leading player in innovation economy. Remember, we used to have bookstores everywhere. It got replaced by Amazon Kindle. We used to have music stores. Virgin Records had this most beautiful music stores. It got replaced by iTunes, Spotify, Pandora. No more. We used to have video rental stores. Gone, replaced by Netflix, YouTube. So if you have been a player on any of these, or many other examples, right now we see Uber is destroying the taxi business. Uber and other companies like that, Didi, Grab, Taxify, all of them, Cabify, they're all destroying the taxi business, disrupting it. Airbnb and its competitors are destroying the hotel business. So one might say, well, innovation economy is about disruption. It's true, it is disrupting it, but it's a positive method. It's a creative disruption. It's replacing it with something much better. And while it might appear quite chaotic, there is a method to the madness. Let me describe that method. Anything we do in our lives, any task, follows our use of these tools within this pyramid. We can do a task manually, mechanically, use electromechanical tools, microelectronics, software, or algorithmic content. About 5 years ago, I was giving a workshop for chief economists of World Bank. So I showed this for the world of finance. This is manual finance, mechanical finance, electromechanical, microelectronics. Spreadsheet was a huge, huge fact when software for spreadsheet became available, changed the world of finance. But my message to World Bank was, if you want to stay relevant, you have to understand blockchain. You have to understand algorithmic content, cryptocurrencies. That is totally disrupting the world of finance. And the job of an entrepreneur actually is to look at anything we are doing in our society, in any part of the world, and see how are we creating value. Are we using mechanical tools, electromechanical tools, microelectronics, or software or algorithmic content? If we are not going through the path of software and algorithmic content, there is a chance for an entrepreneurial company to come and disrupt that business and create a new way of doing it. Now, remember I told you I had to come to Silicon Valley to be involved on innovation. Well, the field of education has changed. This is manual education. Only a few people had access to the books. If you were a member of royal family or part of a church or a mosque or a synagogue, temple, you could have access to knowledge. With Gutenberg's mechanical invention, printing press, it became available to millions of people. With electromechanical printing press, became available to hundreds of millions of people. However, when microelectronics allowed laptops and tablets to be created, we had ability to put thousands of books on a simple laptop or a simple tablet. Just think about when was the last time you went to a library? So if you look at that pyramid, you could say, okay, The next business that's going to be disrupted is library. We are not using it. We are not going there. In the same manner, think about when was the last time you went to a bank? If the answer is not for a long time, guess what? The next business that's going to go bankrupt are most of the banks. Now, we are talking about education. With software and broadband, online courses became available. And COVID actually pushed this quite a bit. But future of education is all algorithmic content and experiential learning. That's what we try to do at Global Innovation Catalyst. There are billions of pieces of information in the forms of books, articles, audiobooks, blogs, vlogs, everything is out there. The job of an educator, a teacher, is not to teach and have people memorize something. It is to help guide the people to experience, and through experiential learning, learn how to become a leader in the future. So I only showed you a few examples, but you can see that this pyramid is becoming an inverted pyramid. And very few things in the future we are going to do manually, mechanically, or electromechanical. Robots will be doing all of that. The future, jobs of future, are innovation jobs using the leverage of software and algorithmic content. Now, this is not theoretical. Look at the top 10 companies 10 years ago. There were PetroChina, ExxonMobil, Microsoft, ICBC, Apple, BHP, Walmart, Berkshire Hathaway, General Electric, and China Mobile. But 10 years later, 7 of top 10 are software and algorithmic companies like Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Google, Alibaba, Facebook, and Tencent. And some of these companies did not exist 10 years ago. And imagine Alibaba and Tencent coming from China. They are not the only ones. My slide is a couple years old, but as you can see in this slide, about 50% of global unicorns have come from outside Silicon Valley. Because of broadband, knowledge has been diffused all over the world. And there is a chance that we can take the Silicon Valley knowledge and know-how on how to create innovative companies all over the world. And COVID accelerated this path with telemedicine, teleworking, teleeducation. Everything is moving in the direction of innovation economy. As I mentioned, at Global Innovation Catalyst, our vision is to help create 10 million innovation jobs. Jobs of future have to have some hard skills and some soft skills. In terms of hard skills, we need to teach algorithmic thinking, not at the graduate school level or undergraduate, but at the K-12. Teach the kids to learn how to design their own virtual robots, their own virtual drones, create their own virtual cities. The company that we are supporting, and we believe would be probably our 5th unicorn, is a company called Polyop. If you go and check polyop.com, it allows the kids to start to think innovatively from a young age and become entrepreneurs. It has virtual innovation hubs teaching young people the skills of entrepreneurship. And what are the skills? what is the basics of a university of future? It has to bring College of Engineering, College of Business, College of Design together. Now, some advanced universities like Stanford started to do this many, many years ago. And I do see, as I travel in different parts of the world, some advanced universities are bringing this within their campus, create tech hubs, innovation hubs within their campus. However, if they don't do it, many people from municipal government, the mayor's office, or private sector go and create these tech hubs. This is an old chart that shows 618 tech hubs across all Africa. The actual number, I was told by AfriLabs, that's close to 1,000. And AfriLabs, an amazing organization that I would highly recommend that you get to know and become members of. I have had the pleasure and honor of working with them, has about 300 of these already members of that. Imagine the power it brings. And it's not just in Africa. This is a partial list of all tech hubs all over Middle East. Let me take the last portion to end my talk on what are the soft skills that we try to teach to create entrepreneurs for becoming the leaders in innovation economy. Traditional mindset is fear of change. Innovation mindset strives for change. Fear of failure is rampant. Don't rock the boat. Don't do anything that might get you fired. Innovation mindset says, I'm going to overcome my fear of failure. And even if I failed, it's okay. It's my stepstone to success. Traditional mindset knew single tasking. Multitasking is the way innovation economy works. Traditional mindset has fear of feedback. In innovation mindset, we encourage you from day one, go and get feedback from your friends, your partners, your potential customers, suppliers. Get the feedback and create a company, create an organization that thrives for excellence by getting feedback from people. Don't be jealous of others' success. Be inspired by their success and try to, instead of pushing them down, elevate everyone, including your own competitors, but try to be better than all of them. And traditional mindset is keep ideas secret. In innovation mindset, it says share and learn to collaborate. And what is really fantastic is, as you can see here, in innovation economy, the youth have a chance to go and change the world, to become the leaders. And any country that has a lot of young people in there has a chance to create the leaders of future, because the youth are not afraid of change, are not worried about fear of failure. And Africa has the highest percentage of youth within every country, within the continent. So Africa is blessed with large number of youth. And also one other thing I like to mention is, if we look at some of the things like sharing and learning to collaborate or multitasking, women have an edge for innovation economy. Young women can play a much bigger role than they have played in the knowledge economy or previous economies. Why? I will just tell you a story. When I was growing up, all I had to do is be a good boy and do good at school. But my sister, who was only 3 years older than me. She had to be a good girl, get good grades, take care of me, take care of my younger brother, help my mom with shopping, and help my mom with cooking. So from very young, early stage in her life, she learned to do multitasking, learned about priorities and algorithmic thinking, and learned how to share and collaborate with her friends. Because if she didn't have time to take care of me, she would ask one of her friends, neighbors, to help us so she could go and do all of her tasks. With that in mind, all I can say is the best way to predict the future is to create it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kamran, for those inspirational and really insightful words. Hearing your story, really the whole trajectory of coming from Iran and to all the successes and failures, I think is going to really resonate with the entrepreneurs who are part of the Milken Motsepe Prize. So thank you for sharing so much of your story and so much advice. We have a number of questions that have come in, so I'm just going to jump in. First, you had shared your experience as a young man at Stanford after you left Iran. And as you know, the entrepreneurs from the Milken Motsepe Prize are from 95 countries across the globe, many of them in sub-Saharan Africa. And you made the great point earlier in your remarks about these global unicorns coming from all over the world outside of Silicon Valley. Can you speak to the importance of support networks for early stage entrepreneurs, and particularly any advice for people outside of Silicon Valley, how they might really start achieving success?
Absolutely. If you look at what is very unique about what Milken is doing, is providing an opportunity for young people to aspire to become entrepreneurs, or young companies that may have a great idea but haven't had a chance to go and completely prove it. Milken Award allows so many people to take it to the next step. That is so key, to learn how to overcome the skepticism and get the right kinds of resources behind you. Now, what are some of the resources in Africa? Well, we talked about these tech hubs. I strongly advise you, find the nearest tech hub, go and meet with some of the other entrepreneurs there, and make it a habit to go over there and see what other companies are doing and share ideas. A huge part of entrepreneurship is sharing of the ideas. And you will find out that innovation economy players, the leaders, the more successful they are, the happier they are to share with you, give you some advice, give you some ideas, help you before asking you to give them anything. A big deficiency I see within the African ecosystem is lack of availability of funds for young companies that are a few young people have started a company and they do not get funding. In Silicon Valley, we have angel investors. The reason they're called angels is because they don't ask too many questions. They remember how they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, before their company became successful. And when they see a young entrepreneur struggling to get investment, angel investors, who majority are former entrepreneurs, they come and say, okay, here it is, $25,000, $10,000, $50,000, $100,000, and go and put your idea into action and let's see what happens. In Africa, we have networks of angel investors, but unfortunately, many of them act as venture capitalists, as venture capital funds. And they ask a lot of questions about your traction, about your revenue, about your profitability, as though they are giving you millions of dollars as a venture capital fund. So that is one resource that is needed to be addressed. And thank God to organizations like Milken that provide awards that can help with this approach. And by helping build the whole ecosystem, we need to do more of these things. When I advise many financial institutions, I say, why don't you allocate $1 million to invest $10,000 in 100 companies? A huge part of entrepreneurship is capacity building. When you go through startup experience, within a few months, you learn a little bit about engineering, marketing, sales, finance, HR. It's not like a big company. When I was at HP, I never met anybody except engineers. I was pigeonholed in a big company to do just engineering. When I started my company, within the first 6 months, I had learned so much, much more than all my years at HP. That's why entrepreneurship is so key. And going through that experience, you may find out that even though you got your degree in engineering, you might be much better in sales. Or even though you got your degree in business, you might be much better in HR or in engineering. That's a way that going through startup experience, you learn a lot more about yourself. I learned about myself that I was not the best CEO. I was much better as a chairman. And the reason I could start 10 companies was I learned how to share my ideas, find great CEOs and collaborate with them and let them lead our companies forward.
Great. That is a fantastic point as our teams are organizing themselves. And we have a team leader for each one who is participating in the Milken Motsepe Prize. So all of you who are part of the project, thinking through all the various roles you'll play and how to empower other people on your team. Also, I did want to point out that your earlier points on the importance of really talking to people early before you're asking for something. Those of you who make it to the finalist round, our 25 finalist teams, are going to be eligible for being part of the Stanford Online course that we're partnering with GIC on, where you get that personal mentoring and you learn all those pieces of the business before we go into an investor showcase. Now, one of our participants here in this webinar rightly pointed out that certain ideas and startup experiences can sometimes put an entrepreneur in danger in certain circumstances and in certain countries. And so if entrepreneurship, as you pointed out, is really critical to economic transformation, but if there are burdensome regulations or certain political situations for an entrepreneur, do you have any advice for someone if they are trying to really build entrepreneurship and practice innovation in an environment that may be more difficult?
Unfortunately, what you mentioned is true. The ecosystems are not the same. Within Africa, if you look at it, by the way, I used to go to Africa 3-4 times a year before COVID. And finally, a couple of weeks ago, for the first time in 2 years, I was able to go to Kenya and I was able to go to Rwanda. And it was so joyful to be back to a country that, to a continent that is addictive. You know, I remember the first time my wife went to Africa. She said, Kamran, be very careful. You go there, you become addicted. You want to go back over and over because there is so much love that Africans in every country give you. However, if you look at it, the innovation ecosystem is different. The first country in Africa that passed a Startup Act was Tunisia. And thank God at that time, the Minister of ICT, a very visionary person, a dear friend of mine, Numan Ferry, he pushed to get the Startup Act be passed. as I have gone to more and more countries, I see that many other countries are following that lead and making their country ecosystem become more ready for innovation economy, for entrepreneurship, by passing different, sometimes enhanced, better versions of Startup Act. If they don't, we should not be surprised that people will go to countries either within Africa or near Africa that have already passed laws favorable to entrepreneurs. Now, there is unfortunately another side. Many of the big corporations, they don't like change because they are the incumbents, and they are seeing that if entrepreneurs come up with new ways that would disrupt their business, it could be very, very adverse, could have adverse effects within their corporation. So the gentleman or the lady who talked, the entrepreneur who mentioned the concern, is quite right to worry about it, because many people may not want change, and they would say, why should we promote entrepreneurship and why should we support entrepreneurs? But the reality is, if they do that, instead of learning how to change their own organization and make it be more entrepreneurial by stifling entrepreneurship within their ecosystem, they open it up so that entrepreneurs from other countries will come and dominate that sector of the business. Entrepreneurship is global, and I really hope that in every aspect, I believe Africa has very capable, highly intelligent, entrepreneurial youth that can go and become the leaders in their countries. And by disrupting some of the businesses that are run by old men who do not appreciate the power of youth, who do not appreciate the role that women play in innovation economy, they need to be replaced by creating new businesses. And that's going to happen, whether they like it or not. So my message is, light is at the end of the tunnel. Just be patient. Good things are going to happen in every country in Africa.
Great, thank you. And I think that gives our entrepreneurs also some of the languages and ways to talk within your own communities about what you're really bringing to your nation, to your broader community, and what's really going to happen in the trends of innovation if people aren't investing in startups and aren't investing in innovation. One of the things that you talked about when you showed, you talked about AfriLab and showed the expansion of all these tech hubs that we know there's been vast change across the continent. I know you mentioned you just got back on it from a trip to the continent. Can you talk about some of the exciting trends or things that you've been seeing if you've been talking with people?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's so interesting. When I used to go to UN meetings, when I used to advise some groups within World Bank, the Africa that they saw the youth typically as a liability, that, oh my God, young people, if they don't have jobs, that they are going to become drug addicts, they are going to become alcoholics, depressed, gang members, terrorists, all those things were the concerns discussed in many of the meetings. The Africa that I saw were the young people who were innovating, creating advanced technologies. Did you know that the most advanced robot that we have, Sophia, it's actually about 25% of the code was developed at in innovation labs in Addis Ababa, in Ethiopia. I mean, when I went and I visited that lab and I saw these young people who had so much expertise in artificial intelligence, in algorithmic thinking, and what they were doing. When I visited some of the uh, tech hubs that they were developing new type of drones for various different sectors of the business. It was so refreshing. And when you look at how companies like Andala have really been able to come and provide outsourcing of doing some amazing work for American and European companies right here in Africa, working, training and working with African technical people. Uh, an amazing thing that many people may not know. Almost all over Africa, when I travel now, I see people use mobile payment. Nobody carries cash. If you want to give money to a friend, pay something, you just use mobile payment. That has allowed the African youth to leapfrog. If you look at what percentage of people routinely on a daily basis use mobile payment to pay for the things, to get a loan, to work with their community, with their friends, versus United States or Europe, you would be astounded how advanced these African young people, the African youth, how they have leapfrogged the Western world to become very active users of mobile payment. And that's why I say banks are the next organizations that are going to go bankrupt, because you look at Africa and the number of people who just use mobile payment never go to the banks.
Absolutely. So on the topic of banks and money, one of the questions we get most frequently is about how people can secure investment. And not only that first seed investment, but particularly as companies are trying to get into growth stage. Do you have any specific advice around things that entrepreneurs should be thinking about when they are pitching in order to get investment?
Yeah, to me, the toughest part for entrepreneurs is to get the initial seed capital or pre-seed capital. That's the toughest part for them. As they get to traction and they start to have revenues and get closer to profitability, believe it or not, many investors, even investors outside Africa, become very interested to support them, because it becomes a financial evaluation. How much was your revenue last year? How much is it this year? What is it going to be next year? What's your gross margin? Very simple. You can see the health of the business and the potential growth. So I'm not too worried about the companies that have already crossed the chasm and managed to become generate revenues and get close to profitability or become profitable. It is the early stage companies that have difficulty, and some of them get some prizes or get some grants that helps them, but then it becomes the next level. If they knew how to use that prize money in proper way, by having learned experientially how to get their companies going, they have a much higher chance of success, versus if they do not get any experiential learning. Everything is so much stronger instead of learning it by theory, doing it yourself and learning how to uh, acquire those skills. So it is going to be very interesting, exciting, because I hope I've been already working with a number of different organizations in different countries to help create that very early stage money for entrepreneurs, just as part of capacity building. My wish for Africa is not just to have one or two unicorns. That is going to happen. My wish for Africa is to help create tens of thousands of companies which are young, are vibrant, and go through the process. And if they failed after, say, 3 years, a company had 5 employees, and after 3 years it failed, I would not call it a failure. I say that this company created 15 person years, 5 people times 3, amount of work. So we need a new index that looks at how many person years worth of job employment was created and look at it as a capacity building. Instead of saying the company failed after 3 years, we should celebrate the fact that somebody had the guts to go and start a business that hired 5 people for 3 years, because every one of those people also needed to have a laptop, needed to have a mobile phone, needed a desk, a chair. So every one of those companies not only created jobs for those 5 people for 3 years, but also stimulated the economy to create many jobs for other people. In Silicon Valley, we have hundreds of companies go bankrupt every year. That's normal. If you have 100 companies, 90 of them go bankrupt, 10 of them become successful, those 10 need a lot of employees. And all of the people who went through their experience and were not able to succeed after 1 or 2 or 3 years, they become employees of those 10 companies that succeeded and moved forward. And after 2, 3, 4 years, learning how it is, they can go back and try it again. That's the secret of innovation economy.
Thank you so much, Kamran. That is great. We could keep asking you questions and learn so much from you, but we will close here. We wanted to thank you so much for joining us today. And really your final comments about, don't worry if things fail, or don't even consider it a failure if you did something. As we are moving into the final round for Milken Motsepe Prize, all of these submissions are due on December 8th. For those of you who become one of the finalists for the Milken Motsepe Prize, there are all sorts of, you'll move into the implementation phase and there will be more speakers, we'll have courses. But for those of you who do not make it into the next round, I think these words that we heard from Kamran today and his journey, what we hope you will take with you is all of the experience, the collected wisdom, the inspiration to keep going. You took a chance to join. You have bold ideas, believe in yourself. I know a question just popped in about where do you find investment. We have a library of free resources for you. It is up there, it is free. Please take advantage of that. We will push out more things to you about where do you go for investment, all sorts of things. But really listening to Kamran, your wonderful entrepreneurial journey, I hope that serves as inspiration. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're grateful for your time. And
thank
for
you,
all
Emily.
of you,
all I can say is if somebody as stupid, fat, bald, ugly like me can make it, imagine what is possible for the rest of your entrepreneurs. So absolutely, I know they will be great and successful.
well, for all of you, thank you again to Kamran. For all of the registrants, if you have questions for us, please go to our help desk on the prize portal. You can email us at mmprize@milkeninstitute.org. You can access this recording and go back and hear Kamran's words, look at his slides. We thank you all. We can't wait to see your ideas. Do remember that December 8th is a hard deadline for the Milken Motsepe Prize in Agritech. So get your ideas in, make sure you fill everything out because we want to hear from you. And whatever happens next, please believe in yourself on your journey and keep innovating. Thank you to the Motsepe Foundation. Thank you to GIC. Thank you to Kamran. And thank you to all the participants. All right, bye-bye everyone.
Bye-bye.